writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm Stephanie, the Publisher Operations Specialist here at Kobo Writing Life.
And I'm your co-host, Joni, and I work on the business team with Kobo Writing Life.
So this episode, we're talking to author Samantha Young. She was an early adopter of self-publishing, and one of the interesting facts, whatever you want to call it, about her is that her book was picked up by a publisher after she self-published, which is not something that happens very often anymore.
Yeah, it's pretty unusual. She was also chatting to us about her collaboration with Kristen Callahan. They have a book coming out in November, which is available for pre-order now.
It's Outmatched. And yeah, it was interesting hearing how they kind of collaborated together, both being fans of each other's work and how that eventually led to a book together. So yeah, we cover lots of stuff, so please keep listening. Please stay tuned to the end of this episode because there's an exciting offer on Samantha Young's title, Into the Deep. Thank you so much, Samantha, for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
And just before we get into it, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a hybrid author. I started self-publishing in 2011, and about a year later, I became traditionally published as well. And I've now released I think I'm on my 38th title since 2011, so it's been a busy 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, definitely.
That's incredible. I'm curious to know, how did you go from being self-published to traditionally published? What was that journey like?
Well, I had been publishing young adult urban fantasy books, and I decided to release a contemporary romance titled On Dublin Street. And to everyone's shock, it hit number 1 in the US and sat there for 16 non-consecutive days. So a lot of publishers came knocking, and I decided to sign a deal with Penguin Random House. And from there, I've published that entire series and some standalones while still self-publishing at the same time.
I'm curious about that. So your book had already been published and already been sold, and PRH bought it and then essentially sold it again under their... Did they just buy print rights, or did they buy all of the rights and then redo it?
For Penguin got On Dublin Street, yeah?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I had self-published that, and they bought world rights.
Okay.
So because of that deal, I'm now published in 30 countries.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so they were able to distribute it more than you had been when you were self-publishing?
Definitely, 100%,
okay.
Yeah.
That's really interesting to me because in my publishing experience, a lot of times publishers won't touch it if it's already been sold. Like they might do different books. So I'm just curious about how they, how it works in terms of rights, I guess. But yeah, were you selling it only in the US?
No, I self-published it through Amazon, worldwide, and it was just such a fast process. I mean, it was right away. It was only on sale for 4 weeks, and it sold nearly 200,000 copies, and that's where the interest came from.
Okay, so they'll do it if it's a phenomenal hit. It's really cool.
It was fast, yeah. So within, I published it at the end of August 2012, and Berkeley had bought it and we'd taken it down about 5 weeks later, so it was ready to be published by them. It went back up under their ebook, and then they did the print in January following year.
So what made you want to self-publish it first?
Just because that's what I was. I was an indie author. That's what I was used to. I didn't expect it to have more success than my YA books because I was writing full time as a YA author. Mm-hmm. And so it was really, I'd always dreamed about being traditionally published before the huge self-publishing phenomenon, but I'd been rejected by agents and publishers. So the indie route was, the way to go for me at that point. So yeah, it wasn't something I anticipated, but it was something I'd always wanted, to see what the process was like traditionally as well.
Yeah, that's really cool. And how different is it, having done it yourself for so long?
There's parts of it isn't. I still feel like I do a lot. I get great help from marketing from the publishing house, and they have really inventive ideas, and that's been a really exciting process with them. But I think it's just who I am. I still feel like I have to drive it as well, because I have been an indie author for so long before it. So I do still do a lot of marketing myself and handling a lot of, the social media part of it myself. But the biggest element obviously is getting it into the bookstores. And the world rights, the foreign rights. I've been able to travel to different countries and meet my readers there. So that's a huge difference from the indie to the kind of traditional process.
Yeah, that's really cool. I hadn't really thought about that. Where's the most interesting place that you've been?
I've been to a few. Last year I got to visit my Polish readers. That was really exciting. I did Krakow Book Fair, and then my publisher took me to Warsaw the next day.
Wow.
And so that was really cool, and such lovely people, amazing people, and really respectful and really warm. I just enjoyed that so much, meeting them. But I've been to a few. Germany, I always have amazing support in Germany, and Croatia, really warm people in Croatia as well. So there's been a few amazing moments traveling to see my foreign readers.
That's really amazing. Can you tell us a little bit about your writing process? What does that look like?
I'm very much a plotter. I have tried to be a pantser. It just doesn't out for me. The word just sums it up for me. It does not happen. So I usually sit down and plot, a kind of basic summary at first, and then I work on my characters, because I don't think a plot can advance without knowing what your character's actions and emotions are going to be that determine how the plot advances. So I always kind of focus on them first, and then from there I do a full summary, and that actually comes from the traditional process, because I usually have to give a 3-page summary to my editor as a proposal for the next book. And I find that proposal so helpful going forward writing the book. So I've started doing it even with my indie books. And then from there, I used to do full chapter summaries, but I think the more experience you get writing, the better you get at understanding how it's going to unfold anyway. So I don't do that so much anymore, but I do always have that kind of involved summary and character profiles kind of plotted out.
Do you self-publish more titles in a year, or do you kind of have an equal number? How do you plan your year around writing?
I usually have one book with the traditional publisher and the rest are self-published. So I try to do about 4 titles a year, and I have to obviously work that out with my indie editor as well, to make sure that I can get booked in with her. So a lot of it comes down to that, like it's a business as well. So I have to get those dates booked in, and then I can work out my planning around, what my editor and copy editor and format are all available to do for me.
What do you think has been one of the best things that you've done for your writing self-publishing business?
The best things I've done? Do you mean
Dublin Street?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, as in books, yeah, definitely on Dublin Street. That was a life changer. That was absolutely life changing.
But in terms of any decisions you've made or anything that you've done that made a difference?
Recently, actually, I would say deciding to co-write.
Okay.
I was actually terrified of that. I've had people kind of hint at me before, do you fancy writing a book together? And the idea of that made me realise that there's a part of me that's a little bit of a control freak.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
That sounds like a way to destroy a friendship too.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. This is it. And I just was like, oh no, it could go so badly wrong, or it could go really, really well. And actually deciding to take that plunge, I think it comes down to finding the right person to write with. I know a lot of author friends decide to write a book together, but Kristen and I just knew each other. We hadn't met. We just knew each other because we loved each other's books, and we had talked to each other online, fangirling, basically.
I love that.
Yeah, and that's where it came from. And I actually think that, obviously we've become friends now through the process, but having that, I think we just knew from each other's books that there was something similar in our creative process, and that's how we were able to pull off co-writing. So I would say, I just loved writing that book with her, and we will see how it actually unfolds and if it's the best decision we've both made. But I think taking a risk, I think you always have to challenge yourself. And so I'm quite proud that we decided to do that, because both of us were quite afraid of the process, and actually it turned out to be a great thing.
How did you do it? How did you work it out between the two of you?
I had said to Kristen right off how much I love how she writes male point of view. I always find it really authentic, and our heroes are always really likable. And so we decided that she would take the male point of view and she'd write his chapters, and I would take the heroine's point of view and write hers. And obviously we worked together on both of those, we brainstormed together on both the characters and how they would develop. But ultimately we each have a voice in the book that way. And I think it worked out quite well.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I can see that working really well.
It's interesting because a lot of writing duos have different ways of doing it, and I just love hearing how people approach writing a book together.
Yeah.
What's the title of the book?
Outmatched.
Outmatched.
And when is it coming out?
November 19th.
Is it done? Are you guys still working? I'm just
It's with the editor right now, so we're both really nervous.
I mean, when I saw you guys had a book channel, I was like, oh my God, I'm excited.
It's that thing where we're both like, is this good? This is good, right? Is this good? But you're waiting on your editor telling you whether it's actually good or you made it.
Well, like, didn't know you guys were friends, and I was like, oh, I'm ready for this book.
So yeah, no, it's been a lot of fun. It really has. And it's been great to get to know Kristen better as well. So the whole process has been awesome.
Can't wait to read it.
Where does Kristen live? Is she American?
Yes, she is.
Okay. So
she is.
collaborating over like phone or email, or how do you do that?
We just go on Skype and we just talk on Skype. Like for the really big brainstorming parts, that's what we did. Otherwise, it was just messages back and forth for the kind of minor things.
Yeah, that sounds like fun.
Yeah.
I'm also interested. What is the indie writer landscape like in the UK, and specifically in Scotland? Are there a lot of other indie writers? Are there conferences going on in the UK, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, there are a few Scottish indie writers and a few romance indie writers. So I've met a few through Scottish Literature, Live Literature, which is a board here for authors where we can be hired for school events and book fairs and stuff like that. So I've been on panels with a few indie authors, some crime writers, and there's also the big romance conferences. I've met a few Scottish authors at those, and Rare, readers and romance events, they do Edinburgh. They've done Edinburgh. This will be their third time next year. It surprised me actually how much of an industry it is here in Scotland as well.
That's cool. And where are most of your readers from? Are a lot of them based in the UK?
No, actually, most of my readers are based in the US.
Okay.
And I don't know what the demographics are, but I do know it from my social media. I get a lot of readers talking to me from Poland and Israel and Germany. But I think demographically, I would say it has to be the US where most of my readers are.
And those readers in Europe, they're reading in translation, right? They're not reading in English for the most part?
Some are reading in English, but most of them have found me through the translation.
Okay. It's cool. Yeah, I never thought about Croatia and Israel, and I know we have a lot of romance readers in Germany.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that much about Poland, so that's a cool market to explore.
Yeah, definitely.
So what drew you to writing romance?
It was actually a reader. As I said, I had published young adult urban fantasy because that's what I enjoy reading. And one of my readers had said to me, I read contemporary romance and I love your romantic subplots. Have you ever considered writing a contemporary romance book? So she gave me a few books to read. What really drew me to it was the character development. I love character development, and that's such a huge part of writing romance. So that's when I decided to write On Dublin Street. But what I did find was I was reading a lot of books about guys who had commitment issues and guys who had the emotional traumas, and it was always kind of the heroine who was chasing him emotionally. Mm-hmm. And I really, as a reader, wanted to find the opposite. So that's why I decided to write On Dublin Street with the heroine being the one that had all the kind of, the past and the trauma, and the hero being the one doing all the emotional chasing.
I love that.
Yeah, that makes it a little, it just a twist on the traditional plot is always.
Yeah, I mean, there's more books like that now. It was just at the time I hadn't come across any at that point. And so it's just, that's what I try to do as an author. I try to write the books that I want as a reader.
Mm-hmm. Do you try to twist the roles in every book you do, or is that something you try to incorporate?
I just always try to make sure that there's something kind of real in the book. It gets harder the more books you write, obviously, to try
I can imagine, yeah.
as original as you can be. And you can't really be completely original in any genre. You just have to be entertaining and relatable. And that's my thing. I try to make my characters as relatable as possible, and to put something in the book that my readers can sit back and go, I've been through this, and it's great to see someone like me, you know, that kind of thing.
Are there any authors that have particularly inspired you?
Oh, loads.
Yeah.
You know, in contemporary romance, as you know, I'm a huge fan of Kristen Callahan. But Mia Sheridan, I absolutely love Mia's books. They're always so emotional and beautifully written. Gosh, you know, when your brain goes blank, even though you've got like
A million people.
Penny Reid, I absolutely love Penny Reid's books. L.H. Causeway, Jay Kreinover, Claire Contreras. God, the list does go on and on. It's just I'm drawing a blank.
No, that's a great list.
No,
and obviously I started off in paranormal, and I love like Rochelle Mead and Jennifer L. Armentrout and Holly Black and all those writers. They've inspired all my kind of YA stuff. And
Did you read The Cruel Prince?
do you know, I have it on my shelf. I actually have the Cruel Prince and Wicked King sitting on my shelf in beautiful hardback edition. I still haven't read it.
I mean, at this point, just wait for the last one to come out. I think 2 months, and then you'll be good.
Yep.
Like life of a book lover, though.
I'm just like,
million books that you are needing to read all the time.
I know, that's the problem.
Seriously.
To you every day when you work here.
And then it's like, why am I reading this book over the other 10 that I have? I don't know.
It's true. I have a million books to read.
Do you have any writing tips for romance, particularly? I know you talked about relatable characters, which is a great
Yeah.
thing. What else do you do to keep your plot lines and everything else kind of fresh and interesting?
I try to make them. I don't do kind of like big dramatic plot lines in my romance, which, you know, I do in my paranormal romance, because that's great. It kind of fits. So I try to keep it down to earth. As I say, I know I keep saying the relatable thing, but I really do think that that's what kind of hits people and gets them. So my tip is really with romance is to find something. Obviously, you yourself haven't gone through a million traumas, book after book, but you know people who have, and you can empathize and you can pull that in to your book when you're writing it. You know, how you would feel in that situation, or how you felt even seeing someone you loved or cared about in that situation, and pull that in. And just write about real things, you know, the real things that I write a lot about grief and family. I always pull family into my series or my books. And for romance, for the characters, I mean, it is all about chemistry between those two characters. And my number one thing that I find in my own books and in the books that I love is banter. You know, like dialogue is such a big thing in romance. And having really good banter between the characters just, I think, keeps readers turning the pages.
That's what I love about romance books.
Yeah.
It's difficult to write good dialogue, though.
It is.
Yeah. It's one of the things that goes wrong a lot of the time, I think, in books. So I'm always interested to hear about processes for creating real dialogue.
Yeah. I think I try to, sometimes I just throw in things that have actually been said to me, or I know has been said between friends, or even conversations that people have at the dinner table. You know, if it's real, it's funny. You know, that's life. But I mean, I find myself sitting at the computer sometimes being like, I have nothing interesting to say at this point. I just have to walk away and come back when I'm feeling a little bit, friskier with my banter. I think just you have to do that. I think that's really important to know when to walk away and when to come back, because readers can tell when dialogue is lackluster.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So switching gears a little bit, how do you approach your marketing of your titles? Because you said you had a publisher who helps you with marketing, but then how do you market your self-published titles?
I have in the past done it myself, and it's a lot of work. But I have hired a publicist for my last few titles to help me run book tours, my bloggers, online book tours, and even just graphics, I do love creating graphics, but it's a time factor. But for indies starting out who maybe, you know, don't have that budget for marketing, it is simply that you do it yourself and you learn how to do these things. I had to teach myself how to use, you know, Photoshop, or I actually started using PicMonkey because it's so straightforward and user friendly, and learn about stock image sites for your teasers, you know, so you're keeping yourself right. And I even learned how to make book trailers. YouTube is such a great help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These things, it's a huge learning process. You know, I've done courses on ads, so I've done courses on Facebook ads and Amazon ads and all those kind of things, and it really is about teaching yourself all these things, and it's a lot of work. I won't lie and say that it's not. When I first started out, I was working 16-hour days, you know, to get this up and running as a full-time job, and because I had put out, I think it was 8 books in a year. I think the first, it was 8 titles I put in a year. So it's really, really hard work, and you do have to teach yourself a lot of new skills.
And it changes all the time, doesn't it?
And it changes all the time. This is the exhausting part of the indie industry, is that it is constantly changing, and it's gotten harder. That's the truth as well. It's gotten harder. There's more titles out there. There's more authors, and so that does make the playing field a little harder to.
Yeah, like the easier it gets, the harder it gets, right? The easier it gets to publish, the harder it gets to stand out.
Exactly. Marketing becomes harder because all the things that used to work stop working because everyone else is doing it. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's keeping up with that changing industry, I guess. That's
definitely
challenging. Can you tell us about what you've been loving lately? Books, movies, TV shows, podcasts?
I have been loving TV shows. Stranger Things just finished the new season. That was I couldn't watch it when it first came on, so I've been avoiding spoilers for weeks.
It's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie to you.
There's just an addictive quality about it, you know. It's that point where you finish one episode and you're like, can I stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning to watch the next one?
I'm gonna do it anyways.
I'm reading a book it's not out yet. It's a young adult title, Every Other Weekend by Abigail Johnston. It's really good. The characters are really, really authentic and quirky and individual, and about 50% the way through that and loving it. Faker by Sarah Smith. It's coming out soon. That's a really, really funny, well-written book. The characters are so likeable in that book. Well Met by Jen DeLuca. That's coming out soon.
Jen DeLuca.
Yeah, it's so fun. I knew I was going to love it as soon as I got sent the blurb with the fair.
That's what drew me into.
So I laughed my way through that whole book. So yeah, I've been loving those.
And then what can readers expect from you next? And then what are you working on? You mentioned Kristen Callahan title, but anything else?
Yeah, I've actually got my debut adult paranormal romance book coming out on October 1st. It's under my pen name S. Young. So it's titled War of Hearts, and it's one of my most favourite books I've ever written, and I cannot wait for it to come out.
I'm deep in a paranormal romance world because of Cressley Cole. So
I love her. She's awesome.
There's like a podcast about it, and I'm just rereading them all over again. I'm like, I'm obsessed. This is a problem.
There's no such thing when it comes to PNR. I absolutely love it.
I'm going to add yours to my list now.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. It's been awesome.
My focus drifted as I moved to turn back to the group, and I caught a profile in the crowd that made the blood rush in my ears. I froze, my eyes taking in the familiar jawline and straight Roman nose. Familiar lips kissed an unfamiliar forehead. It couldn't be him. My heart sped up as I watched the profile turn. A more than familiar, beautiful smile hit full force and winded me. For what felt like forever, I drank in the sight of Jacob Kaplan, the first boy I'd ever loved. I hadn't seen him in 3.5 years. And there he was, tall and built, looking more clean-cut than he used to in a long-sleeved thermal and black jeans. His dark hair was shorter than he used to wear it, but it suited his handsome, angular face. I didn't even want to look into his dark eyes because I knew it would only usher me into an even bigger world of pain than I already found myself in. That pain intensified as I followed the arm he had wrapped around a dark-haired girl buried into his side, her hand resting on his chest. I was tall at 5'8". She was taller, curvier, much, much prettier. With her long dark hair and olive skin, she looked perfect against him. I hated her. I hated him. 3.5 years, and it hadn't stopped hurting. "Charlie! Hello, Charlie!" Maggie shrieked drunkenly, and I watched as my name hit Jake's ears. I noted the way he tensed, my fingers trembling around my beer bottle. His eyes shot up from his group and tore through the crowd across the room. His chest jerked as his gaze collided with mine, and his arm fell away from the girl cuddled into him. His lips parted as shock slackened his handsome features, and I watched him mouth my name. Everyone disappeared around me as we locked eyes for the first time in years. The music dulled to a throb, the conversation to a muffled buzz, and all I could hear was my heartbeat. I wanted to get out of there. I wanted to get as far from him as possible, but as he pushed past his questioning friends and headed toward me, I found myself glued to the spot, my cheeks flushing with emotion as he came to a stop before me.
We hope you enjoyed listening to the audiobook sample of Samantha's title, Into the Deep. We have an exclusive offer for KWL podcast listeners. You can get the audiobook Into the Deep for $3.99 with promo code KWLPODYOUNG. All you need to do is go to Kobo.com, find the audiobook Into the Deep, and use promo code KWLPODYOUNG, all one word, at checkout. This is a limited time offer from October 23rd to November 23rd. Grab your copy today. We also have a link to the audiobook in our episode description. Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're looking for Samantha's titles, we'll have links to all her books on the Kobo Writing Life blog. Or if you're interested in learning how to grow your sales, visit KoboWritingLife.com.
If you're ready to start your self-publishing journey today, sign up for free at Kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing. This episode was produced by Stephanie McGrath and Joni DiPlacido. Music was by Tearjerker, and the editing was by Kelly Robotham. Special thanks to Samantha Young for being a guest on our podcast.